want to start today's episode with a story about a recent practice that we partnered with. Growing practice, lots of patients, and the billing was being done in-house. Provider was exhausted. She was chasing down rejections, making sure providers were signing out the charts, trying to manage a growing AR with minimal strategic oversight or metrics to even manage the process. And she knew she wanted to outsource, but she was terrified. She was worried about the transition would be a nightmare. She was worried it would cost too much. So today we're going to answer the questions that we provided to her so that she felt comfortable with that transition.
Welcome to NatRevMD, a podcast where we share tips on optimizing medical billing and improving practice efficiency so you can have the business of your dreams. I'm your host, Dr. Heather Signorelli, founder of NatRevMD. Let's get started.
So this was an office that actually had some good people on her team and others that she wanted to find another place for, right? They didn't make sense for the roles that she had. She was terrified that if she outsourced, she would lose control of her own money. And so that was one of the main reasons why she had insourced in the first place, right? She could control the chaos around the billing process. But what ended up happening is if people left, she was in a position where those individuals were hard to replace, hard to retrain, and she didn't really have any one person overseeing the entire process, right? And that was creating kind of this chaos. Everybody was in their own silo, but there was no strategic overview of what they needed to do to manage. So she hit a wall. She was frustrated and decided to contact us and ended up making a switch. We were able to take all of that off of her plate, get her a metric dashboard, and then really be able to sit with her and look at the numbers and set up KPIs. We were even able to take one of the staff members that she really wanted to keep onto our team, which was really exciting. And now they have some of their highest revenue months ever. It has been stable. Their AR is less than 10% over 90 days. And it has been a dream to work with them as well as have her a part of our client profile. So some of the feedback she provided to us is that, that we were detail oriented, knowledgeable, and that we made the transition easy. So today we're going to talk about some of the biggest decisions you can make for your practice. And that's really around should you outsource your billing. And do want to share it's not for everyone. And there are some key things that you can review to determine if it's the right fit to do an outsourcing at all. So we're here to break down those decision guides and really kind of cover the biggest fears that practices have about outsourcing and kind of the things that you can do in order to ensure that you have the right partner. All right, so fear number one, and the question that we often get is, it's going to be too much work to transition. So obviously, this is the fear of the unknown, right? You're already busy. You're already managing the billing team potentially. You have no metrics. And the idea of ripping that out, especially if they're in-house and replacing that, how are you going to get that knowledge transferred out to an outsourced partner? And it sounds overwhelming and exhausting. And so I will share that, in a good billing partner system, they are the ones who are doing the heavy lifting, right? They're setting up the meetings. They're meeting with you. They've got an organized intake process of understanding each part of the process. Typically, when we do these transitions, we are establishing those weekly touch points that lasts until the practice is stable. And then we implement a shared issue tracker so that you know exactly what's being worked on with denials or issues. There's clear responsibility of what the billing team's doing versus what the office needs to provide. And we set up those detailed monthly dashboards so that you can look at the KPIs. So really, I would say the heavy lifting is typically in those first 2 weeks. And we have an onboarding call ahead of time so that then we go through each of the steps of the current workflow. And then we're meeting weekly to make sure that claims are getting out, charts are getting signed, any eligibility issues are fixed. All of those nuances are being addressed, reconciliations being done, so that you aren't managing the transition, we're managing the transition, but you have to show up for the meetings and make sure that we're all aligned. And so you do have to have the time for the meetings, but typically that, transition period of the heavy lift was within that first 4 weeks. And I will say, so if you are looking for a new partner, you want them to step out the expectations around what a transition looks like, right? So when are you guys meeting? How are we going through the process? What feedback are you getting? So very important to have all of those things worked out with your new vendor ahead of time and making sure that you feel comfortable with the process and that they're communicating the expectations and timelines and go from there. All right. The number two fear that we often hear is it's going to be more expensive, right? You look at the percentage fee of an outsourced company and compare it to your in-house biller salary, and you think it costs more. So obviously, you need to make sure that you're weighing apples to apples. If you are losing an in-house team, you need to not just look at the biller's salary, right? Of course, you need to look at benefits, PTO, any sort of turnover, and then retraining that you have had to manage. And most importantly, revenue that has been missed, right? So if your AR over 90 days is at 45, 50%, that's a gap in terms of what you can be receiving. Or if your in-house team is submitting charges once a week versus every day, that's also going to impact cash flow. And so those nuances are important to think through when you look at, if an outsourced team's charging you, 6%, 7%, depending on, the type of arrangement and size that you are, maybe lower. So you'll want to really make sure that you're taking into account truly, salary, wages, and benefits for the in-house team members, and then also an increase in revenue if you are able to capture that accounts receivable. And some of the things that we notice with kind of ballooning accounts receivable may not always just be like, oh, was the team just not touching the claim, but it may be the strategic oversight of how to manage the denials, right? So are we just statusing claims versus actually getting a resolution to the claim? Are there front desk issues that nobody's calling out, right? That they don't think it's their issue, so they don't call out the eligibility or the prior auth denials. And so really important for us to make sure that that feedback is getting set into the right responsibility or accountability loop so that those things don't drop through. And that's why I'm a big fan of not putting those things in email and instead putting them on some sort of issue tracker where you can say, okay, Jane Doe's claim had such and such issue. We need eligibility rechecked. That's the responsibility of the front desk. Front desk gets in there, they work the issue tracker, and then we're doing that, on a weekly basis. Or there's a coding denial, we need the provider to look at the documentation. We've got, an ICD-10 that failed, we need a new ICD-10. Again, those sort of things are really important that you have clear delineation of whose responsibility it is, and then tracking those issues on a month-to-month basis. All right, fear number 3. What if the next team is just as bad as my current team? Obviously, you may have been burned before. Maybe you had a bad in-house experience or an outsourced experience. Maybe you were, using a inexpensive overseas 2-3% billing team, and they were just submitting claims and following up, but not really truly resolving claims. That can leave you kind of feeling nervous and unsure. And so the reality is you really want to make sure that you're not just hiring a billing company, that you're hiring a management partner, right? Somebody who's going over the details with you, who's transparent with reporting, communicating, asking questions. Again, when we partner with practices, it is one team. We don't see ourselves as separate from the practice. We see ourselves as an extension of the practice. We are in their system. We show them the notes that we're making, that our team is making with regards to insurance phone calls, and really want to make sure that everybody is on the same page. And again, back to that accountability loop, we're making sure that our team is accountable for their part, that we're communicating where we need the practice's help, and that we're working together to get resolutions. We were reviewing end-of-month dashboards last week, and we have many practices that insurance AR over 90 days is, certainly well less than 20%, some as low as 1%, and others, less than 10%. So a lot of that, obviously is going to come with the type of subspecialty, but it's also going to come through how well your team's processes when it comes to managing accounts receivable. More hospital claims, difficult surgeries can sometimes take a little bit longer to pay. But in general, most claims are paying less than that 30-day range. So you'll want to make sure from speaking with a partner that you're interviewing is really understanding, how, not just how they submit claims and post payments and call up an AR, but how do they handle complex issues, right? So if you have a complex issue such as a claim that continues to get denied, right? It's denied once, it's denied twice. and we're still not getting it paid, then what is the plan to escalate that? How do they get that information to you? Is it through email? Is it through a tracker? Is it through a jelly bean message on the EMR? And really understanding, okay, if there's eligibility issues, if there's COB issues, if there are complex things that are making it challenging to get a claim paid, how does that get escalated both internally and then externally, as in to your practice, right? So where I see billing teams really struggle, and it's not a fault of the billers themselves, right? The billers are doing their job and they're submitting claims, they're statusing claims, but then they get stuck. And in a situation where they get stuck and they don't have anybody higher up who has enough time and attention in the account to manage those complex issues. So they get stuck. Sometimes they ask the practice, sometimes they don't, but then it just sits there stuck. And then you get more of those every single week. And that's how the AR builds up. And that's what happens, and why I see so many people who have come to us in the past are like, I'm changing billing teams every 2 years and just really struggling. And I think that it's that strategic oversight, which I think is one of the most needed things within a billing team, is that strategic oversight. Who is in the account every day? Who is checking up on those denials? Who's answering the team's questions when there's something that's stuck? Because there will be something that is stuck. And it's just a matter of making sure that those are addressed. And so the reality is you need to, when you're thinking about your team, right, in-house or outsourced, you need to think through who is going to have that strategic oversight for your office. And so if you have a small in-house team and it's 2 or 3 people and you don't have somebody who can have that strategic oversight and you have turnover, you're going to have an issue with your in-house team. And if you have an outsourced team, and again, lower percentage, high volume billing companies that don't have, again, that strategic oversight that has enough high touch involvement in the account, you're going to struggle. And so those are kind of the things that you need to make sure you have a plan around. Obviously, if you are going to outsource, you do still need to have someone that is in the office that is helping support and answer questions and manage that partnership. That's really key. And I really suggest that not be the physician owner or the physicians who are running the practice. I really do believe that needs to be an office manager or a front desk individual who's strong and has an ability to help manage and complete tasks together, because that is important. And so if you don't have that role in the office who can really help support the billing team, I would recommend getting that before outsourcing, because I think that that's going to make it a challenge. Obviously, if you're a superstar and you can do 100 things at once, and maybe you can manage that, but I have found that to be a struggle for many practices if they don't have that office manager support for outsourcing billing. Either that, or you need to have a reduced clinical schedule so that you can spend the time doing the administrative task of helping do that. So hopefully that kind of just answers some questions that we get often when it comes to 3 fears that folks have. So again, when you are looking to hire a company, you are going to want to kind of go over these 3 things, right? So how do they transition? What does that transition plan look like? What's their cost structure? And how do they staff the team? And how do we make sure that you have a stable, connected individual who is going to be your liaison and help hold the team accountable, and also get the practice the right communication and metrics in order to manage? And then last is really just making sure that you understand the difference between their team and your current setup, so that you can really make sure that you're not going to be burned again, and that you have the right setup and level of accountability and strategic oversight moving forward. So 3 signs that you've kind of hit that moment and you're ready to make a change with your billing team is often that you've hit that wall of frustration, right? Your accounts receivables increasing, you're tired of guessing, you're tired of looking at your bank account and wondering why it doesn't match how hard you've worked or what's going on in your practice management software. And you really are looking for somebody who has the level of communication and the metrics and the strategic oversight to help you build out the billing process that you need. Obviously, having that strong office manager I personally think is critical. We've seen a few practices who've not had this and who've been successful, but I would say that is the minority, and really think having that strong office support is key, both for your own sanity and also for your staff in the office, as well as your billing partner. A lot of times these people are also the ones who are helping us, partner together. If there are front-end workflows that we need to address, like eligibility, they're able to use our subject matter expertise, but then be the ones to implement. And so that's why that role is often really important. So obviously, I do also want to be brutally honest. We have turned away practices that aren't the right fit for us because I think outsourcing is a growth tool and it's not just like this saving grace. It does take partnership. And so if you are not operationally ready or don't have an office manager, don't have an internal discipline to sign off charts, close your notes on time, I do think that an outsourced team may not be the right fit for you. Obviously, we can't bill a claim if you don't sign the chart. And so highly recommend that teams without that strong process, again, that's about getting that office manager in place so that you can get those internal processes set up so that charts are signed out, eligibility is completed, and that there is an accountability process for your front desk so that if there are eligibility issues and if the billing partner does suggest, hey, you need to, I recommend these changes, that you have somebody to help you with that. Obviously, if you are small and unstable and trying to figure out all of these things, I highly recommend that your first hire be actually that office manager, even if it's part-time, so that they can help really organize the office and be able to then tackle that RCM partner after that. Sometimes, single office or single doc offices can do a combo, right? Where if it's just a single physician, maybe you have a part-time office manager and a part-time biller that are both working together in the office who can help you. Highly recommend that. We do have a billing course. Obviously, if you do have individuals who are looking to, kind of understand ways that we've done it, and maybe you're too small to consider an outsourced partner, but you want to have kind of the same strategic oversight, you can check out our billing course at natrevmd.com and head on over there. And there's under resources, there's the billing course. And again, we've got some free modules and then some that kind of come with templates and so forth that are with a paid option. Obviously, if you're looking to have it done for you, you're a larger, more established practice, and you need some help in just assessing whether or not your in-house team is working or your outsourced team is working, we're happy to review those billing metrics with you. Just head on over to our website, again, natrevmd.com, natrevmd.com, and we actually have a free billing audit up in the right-hand corner. So hopefully this was helpful just to answer some questions that I think folks come to us and often have. So have a great rest of your day.